Morning, everybody. All Saints Day, 1 November 2012, Southern Colorado. And I want to start today with a discussion of what is cloudy. What is the definition of cloudy? When is the sky cloudy and when is the sky clear? Because there are different definitions of what is a cloudy sky. When I look at this sky, and in forecasting, this would be essentially a partly cloudy sky, even though we're getting maybe 80-90% of the sun coming through, probably closer to 80-85%. But when I started meteorology, this would have been what was called a thin overcast. Definitions have changed. Let's explore that. Another southwest flight. Increasing our clouds on this day. But it went precisely through this spot. And after it hit that spot, the trail remained much, much brighter. Same thing with going in this spot and coming out of this previous cloud. What is cloudy? What are clouds these days? All right, I want to ask a bit of a rhetorical question. And that is, what are clear skies? What is defined as clear skies? When I started this in education and of myself and schooling in the 80s, clear skies were when the skies were clear. Outside, and I'm going to throw on the mouse here, I'm about right here, up against the western slopes of the Sangres on the eastern end of the San Luis Valley. And you can see in the visible imagery through this morning's 4-hour loop or so that you can see we've got this shield of thin clouds coming overhead, with this being the state of Colorado. You can see that it's advancing in from the north and east. But when we look at the observation with the nearest reporting site, which to me happens to be Alamosa, there's an undecoded METAR report. When I began, it was called an ASOS, or Automated Surface Observing Report. Now they're METARs. ALS is Alamosa. K essentially denotes the United States. Here's the time, 1852Z, 01 being the first day of the month, so November 1. It is an automated report, meaning that there is no human involved. It is all computerized. 000, so 0 direction on the wind, and 0 knots, so that is calm winds. 10 statute miles is the visibility. Skies are clear. Temperature is 13 Celsius, dew point is minus 11 Celsius, or humidity is sub 10% or thereabouts. The altimeter is 30.21. Remarks, meaning is an AO2. That is the type of observation, the type of equipment doing it. If there's a human augmenting it, we would have an A after the 2, sea level pressure, and then continuation of the op. If we look at what it used to be, and in fact, let's go to another site, because I'd like to look at Denver. They're in a very similar situation. We'll come up to Denver, and we'll look at their raw observation, and it's still automated. They still have clear winds. There's still 10 statute miles visibility, but they have at least augmented their odds, saying there's scattered clouds at 14,000 feet, 22,000 feet. We've got broken clouds. Their humidity is higher, and then there's the altimeter. And so they've added some additional data. When I look outside, and we will shortly in a bit, things are very different. We're dealing with a lot of clouds pouring over the Continental Divide and through Colorado into Kansas, New Mexico, and so forth. So why could we call these clear skies? And for many years, a day like this would be reported to the airport, to the pilots, as clear below 12,000 feet, CLR BLO 120, flight level 12,000 feet. And that's not the case. So what they did is they began to take the human element out of the observation. We have essentially, we're ignoring the high clouds. We're ignoring the contrails that are accentuating the high clouds. If computers are doing the observation, then we're not augmenting it with the most important element, which is the human being. And that is no longer included in these observations. Generally, if we've got a courageous and an observer from the National Weather Service that is doing his job, or the FAA, then they will augment these observations. But unless you're in a weather event, that rarely happens. So these high clouds are reported as not being there at all. Quick look at the map discussion for Thursday afternoon, the 1st of November. Still the remnants of Sandy across the mid-Atlantic and northeastern states, with some light rains persisting in this area. Still in an aspect of the warm sector as you move to the Canadian Maritimes, but the bulk of the storm is now weakened and weakening as it is rather chilly there, and then drifting off to the north. Some rains from California through the remainder of the northeast, or the northwest, excuse me. That storm then weakens. In fact, it gets kind of sheared in two, with a portion left behind over California, while the northern portion begins to move through the Canadian prairies and then the Dakotas, and still this guy lingers, with the leading edge of this red likely to be the locations as we get into early Friday morning where the rains would be. Still a nice storm in the Gulf of Alaska. That kind of winds up, sends a strong jet into the west coast. Here's the remnants of the showers that are along the northwest now, and then that weakening split part of the storm into northern Mexico. And then Sandy, as we move into the weekend, into Sunday morning, is largely out to sea, replaced by another little slug of energy coming across the Great Lakes states. Little reinforcing of cool air coming in from Western Canada for the Dakotas. Then a nice strong high beginning to establish itself off the California coast. That high begins to nose inland. As that happens, we still have this energy that in the previous day was directed southbound, southeastbound. And this is going to try to join up with this guy. It pushes out, but it does dig a trough. Now we're the day before the election. We still have the high of the west. The west is going to be gorgeous. And in eastbound, we've got this nice ridge that is arcing across the western states, keeping them beautiful from just about the Mississippi westbound. But election morning, we've got a storm rolling through the southeastern states with the rains and probably some thunder showers in this location as well. And by then, Sandy has become a North Atlantic event. And if we extend the forecast out to the end of the 6th day, which would be Wednesday morning, this trough sharpens, and we may end up with more rains coming into New York, Bridgeport, Boston, the Potomac area as we get to the day after the election. West of that, west of the Ohio, Mississippi, it is clear sailing, and then the cold weather is alleviated as Alaska, the Northwest Territories, the Yukon, and northern BC begin to warm up. This is yet another day in the Southern Rockies where the chemtrails are just too many to be counted. There's just too many of them out there. We've got, this is the reason for this one in this cloud, and you can see how this trail begins to pile up against this anomaly, whatever is causing this trail to pile up here. Otherwise you can see it's flat and then dissipates flat and continues on. But there's something happening right here. And so they fly these planes, hundreds of them, if not thousands globally, hunting for these anomalies in the sky. Whether they're energetic, whether it's weather related, doesn't really matter at this point. They continue to fly them. Certainly one cloud type that they're very interested in is this type here. This what they term fall streak. The problem with that is these fall streak require something to initiate the streak, the fall of the quote-unquote ice crystals from what would normally be a flat cloud base. And we're missing that in this kind of sky. Here's another one here. It's not quite as well formed and defined as this one, but nevertheless it's there. Up and through here, we have the remnants of a trail. And the trail is in the process of becoming a cloud. And then the trail comes and then it really becomes this little circular thing with a hole in the middle. And so none of these clouds in this sky today would be here, save for the particulates introduced into the sky by the chemtrails, by these pseudo-condensation trails. And we've really got to get beyond the discussion of whether there's contrails or chemtrails. What we really need to talk about is the agenda. And that's where what I'm concerned about. What is the agenda? Why do we need to have the atmosphere saturated with these particles? What tool are they using it for? This is kind of an interesting phenomenon. Curl here and back into here. If we're going to have a chemtrail flight through, it'd probably come right in through here or across the two. I've seen both happen. Just had this little guy, one of these little business jets, and we're seeing these more and more and more, these Falcons, Gulfstream citations, leaving little trails. This particular one was blue. He's kind of cutting right across this curly phenomena with his tail, clipping the edge of this hoop, comes across, and then you can see how his powders, there, you get the shade so I can see, once it hits this opening, you can see they pinch. It begins at this, to this, and now we can see a plane that hit this spot precisely and right coming through it. So something is taking them and pushing them this way. And the angle that that's happening is aligned by this plane. I'm curious that its trail only luminesces, only stays bright in the drier opening. So these trails are not showing us an aspect of humidity. There's something else up there that keeps these trails excited and then visible. And there's its interaction. If I had time lapse on this, we could probably see the one trail moving right through another, and I think that's what we're seeing here. So trails, one is moving across the other. They're not working or flying in unison. This one is moving across this one. This one is moving this way, while this one moves this way. This is what I see them do time and time again. So something was in here, that point extending to there, comes back up, it's a stabilization point, it's the outside of this, and then on. So whatever they're doing it in real time. There's no guessing what they're doing up there. It is pretty precise. It is pretty precise as that trail hits right through that bright spot. Perfectly so. There's kind of a double eye there and there. And it chose to go through the edge of the eastern one. Now that we've given this formation a moment to evolve, you see how profound at this point this push back in was. And then this plane, this trail, absorbed into the cloud, one coming up in this way, another one coming up and over this way. So that it's curling, it's kind of curling in this way along the path of the trail. But that's a pretty serious bend. That's pretty serious. The bloody plane knew exactly where the straight edge ended and the curl began with perfection. Track this across, and we can still see it as it moved through this other much larger formation, again through the brighter spots, through the center of it, with precision. Just a few minutes later, shape has totally changed. This just happens to be one of those planes. There aren't many, but there are a few that are out there today where every single one of them seems to be leaving a trail. This one isn't. And so when you have clouds as we're seeing here, which are wholly as a result of chemtrail and other activities, wonder why that one plane is not leaving a trail. Whereas just off to the south, we've got a fresh one being laid down. Also alignment with some other ripplings in the sky. But this guy, for some reason, just isn't participating. This guy's passing by insanely slowly and crazy low. Just a bit of a trail coming out. That's either FedEx or UPS colors. We'll be able to see on the big screen. But he is low and way, way slow. Maybe that just gives him a little better fuel economy. Nevertheless, there's the trail. At this altitude, that shouldn't happen. Especially with radius on data showing the humidity so incredibly low today. But there he is, doing it. UPS or FedEx, they're not quite as restricted in their destination arrival times other than landing slots at the airports. But he is definitely low. And here's another one. End of this cloud inside the opening, come along precisely through that formation, which is in the process of becoming a fall streak type of cloud. Let's push on in with this Sony and get a paint scheme. United Continental. Easy to see that with that insignia blue tail with the gold atlas outline at the front end of the tail. And so anytime an airline changes ownership, all the planes have got to be painted. Always seems to make them a little, you can never really disguise them, especially at this altitude, elevation, and that they're just going so slow. Where is he? And the fact that he is below these clouds, he's low. So he's not even at cloud height, he's below that. All right, let me step back and see what his target might be. Here's our target, right there right in the middle of its stripe. I mean, pretty darn precisely so. But we've had all of these chaotic clouds at the edge of the mountain range. And so he's at cloud height. You can see by how his tail is disturbed and literally just going right in through those clouds. So he's at cloud height. And then the patterning has been interesting to say the very least. And now we've got a plane going up through the brightest spot of this cloud, right through the center there. We'll push on in and see if we can't ID the make and airline. No, it's going to be a small guy. It's one of those, let's look at the Dassault Falcon that they've got working. They're cheaper to fly, less payload, and they usually don't gather the attention of us watchers. But nevertheless, through the clouds, right through that cloud, through this arcing formation. And now we have his trail. You can see how it's been deformed. At that spot, lifted up and then in towards the mountain. We're just going to kind of scan the mountain here and see how convoluted it is, especially on the south end. You can see the waves coming over, then up and over, and a whole lot of trails. I've got the trees in the way here, so I can't really see them. But they seem to be on the southern edge of a whole lot of rippling that is happening off to the north of it. Now I can hear him. He sounds like he's in descent, but he's low. He's low. These fascinating curls. In these eyes even. Look at all these curls. This is just a little strange. It kind of goes back to the Oregon and this peaking, or this pulling the clouds up. Just this lifting. And it's not like they're bubbling up with a flat base. They're peaked. And so these are very localized features, structures. Very curious. I've seen this before, and usually it's like tubes running this way along the mountains, and then another one coming in diagonally across it, and that gives us these shapes. This one looks like an American. It looks like American. What do you think? Silver plane. aluminum plane, and then the paint scheme, red and blue. The clouds, but definitely chemtrailing. And off the top extent of this structure here, through kind of like the two darker spots there. So it's like this thing is stepping up, but the center of it is probably this darkening area right there in the middle, where the clouds then come out and do a 90-degree angle. Two holes, clouds come out of the other angles, a 90-degree or off to the west. Two more holes here and here, here and here. And then we have the structure then falling out to the west. And we see this kind of shape on the satellite imagery when clouds do this like chicken foot thing, where they have a point or 2 points and then angles coming out from it. Again, trail staying brightest in that spot. One more plane flying. Signatures of a freight carrier in the United States. This one happens to be a 767 from UPS, doing the aerosol operations, aerosolizing these particles, these metals, these substances. This particular one left a little notch there. But what's fascinating is what's happening below it. There's his tick. There's a previous tick. All this chaos happening at this leading edge. It's definitely a mark, and it looks like he's headed almost in front of the sun. I'm going to move a little bit away from the trees and see if we can't get a look at what's going on over these mountains a little bit clearer. But once again, like the other planes, he's way, way too low to be anything but an aerosol plane. Thank you, UPS, for helping out the powers that be pull off this operation. UPS. Just pushing in a little bit closer, just to see if we got a full wingspan or if it's just only delivery through the engine nacelles. And this plane is a little bit higher than the FedEx and American Airlines ones that we've seen earlier today. But still, you can see this trail. Definitely bright as this deck of high clouds becomes a deck of mid-level clouds. And here's some of the craziness that's happening over the mountains. This feature in particular I find a little fascinating. Matched up. And then we've had another plane. Here was our UPS flight. Here's this plane. Interested, he's just going above that little burst. Let's push in and see who this guy's flying for. This looks like a Cessna jet. They are flying more and more of these business jets. They're cheaper. They're cheaper. They're cheaper. They're cheaper to operate. And then they can be anonymous when they land. They can be totally anonymous. Now I've captured another plane low overhead, another one of these business jets, another Cessna, probably a CJ2 is my guess. Not as familiar as I probably should be with the underneaths of these business jets. A little Cessna nevertheless. And I see these guys often, and this is about as low as I've ever seen one. But he's not trailing either. So he's just shuttling off to destination. And then here's the other little track, leaving his little ticks in the sky. And it's so interesting how the bright spots of the trails are where the sky is the darkest, where there is the least amount of clouds. Boom, bright spot there, tick, tick, tick. This is the primary phenomena right here. but it still has outer reaches that extend away on the edge of this guy. And then this whole grinding wave action. This is what's going to be interesting in time lapse. I just had to get that up and running this afternoon because this eastern horizon has been amazing, utterly amazing. So we'll see what this looks like in motion a little bit later on. Here's our UPS flight on the horizon as we get the trail front lit and we're from behind. Brighter spot there, and then a nice little knot right there. Something's happening there. I'm gonna push in with this Sony 30 power optical, 90 power digital. It's just right for this kind of work. And then I can have the infinity setup focus, and it has an active stable stable. Never mind. Into the clouds. Just curious. I think with this formation, we're going to see a lot of clouds, or a lot of planes. For this far, there are a lot more about 2 hours ago, but then we didn't quite have the formation of the lenticular-like cloud that this one is now demonstrating. There's another plane that just emerged from this funky cloud over the hills. That's the single spot that remained from its flight. But that still continues to grow, this little funky cloud with all of these curls. Curls in the bottom, curls at the top. Curls at the bottom, curls at the top. It's like they have these two layers grinding against each other, giving us this incredible sheer vorticity or curl. Well, winding down what has been an incredibly rich chemtrail day here in southern Colorado and throughout the entire state of Colorado and extending into northern New Mexico, Kansas, Texas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, and then likely tomorrow points much farther east as we're on the leading edge of a storm that is now impacting the Pacific Northwest coast. Seems to be the edge. We kind of have the structures fanning out towards the north and this side towards the south. But nevertheless, in a true natural lenticular form, none of this would exist. We would just simply have the lenticular, and it would have a much smoother edge than that. We can see along the Sangres as we head off to the south, the airfoil type shape pattern that is coming together, and ahead of it, you can see all of the other texture, much like where I had just been looking at behind me. This texture should not be present in a natural formation. Swing to the west, and we'll get to sunset since we're there, and you can see all the trails that continue to lace the sky, and the kinks that those trails, something has brought this trail back down this way. Most of it is here, but for some reason, this portion of it was folded back over this direction. Another kink there, across here. This trail here ended at this one, so a little bit of precision going on right there. And then on the horizon, you can see all of the other different trails. So we would see skies that would be much clearer if we weren't fighting or dealing with these particular trails. Here's the center point of this one. Trails fanning off to the north, to the right on this side, and then scooped in another direction on this part of the trail. So it's all about establishing a geometry in the sky so they can measure and mark off just how the atmosphere is responding. This trail here is kind of fascinating. You can see in the clearer area, the darker area, how the powders, the aerosols, are falling downward. They're in a descent. They go neutral to invisible right here, resume the descent pattern here. And then it's like they're on top of a waveform. And then we've got a fresh one right in here, way off in the distance, probably on the border between Utah and Colorado. And then this trail here, right on top. We can just follow him and you can see how it undulates. But right in through here is the crest. And then here it is right across the top of the cloud. And then this one seems to be about to intersect it. So there's just, I suppose when you have many planes capable of working this operation, you can begin to micromanage the sky. And from what I'm seeing, they're hunting anomalies. Either they're creating the anomalies and measuring them, or they're happening naturally, and they've got sensors to figure it all out and try to keep up with them. But here's a very unusual break, tear, smear. There's two of them. One here, and this one here, where the trail has encountered some kind of a disturbance. And here we go, this trail. Here you can see coming across the previous trail. I would love, love, love to spend a couple of days in the cockpit and just cruising the skies, just looking at things from that perspective. This has been going on so long that it probably doesn't appear as anything out of the ordinary. This has been going on for so long. And really only from the ground can we look at it and see the bigger picture. And I suppose the view from space would be a fascinating perspective to have as well, especially with the surveillance technology that can be deployed on this. So that's kind of what we got going on. Shut this down, take some stills. If I come back, well, there'll be more after this. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Share these vids and keep looking up. All right, here's a day a couple of days ago, and you see all this rippling coming at a cross angle. And the angles of these waves, the frequency, and then their orientation to the mountains and to the jet stream is dictated by these trails. You can see where this one had its fold, this one went through. There's a kink that another flight would be interested in. This nice little spreading action here as the contrail begins to spread out. And then this whole area is charged somehow, because this is not regular lift. There's some other force at play going on in this kind of a lenticular cloud. If it were wholly natural, why would we have so many planes? Why would there be so many trails interested? Nice big dip there, had a cross flight. We'll just continue to watch here, and you can see these clouds, one different movement versus this one. Very different movements, and it is this cross movement that the trails keep track of. There's a collapse where something is resisting the flow here, and so the trail gets squished upon itself. Another one there. And then because on this particular day there should have been no clouds at all, when the energy is relaxed, they simply dissolve, they simply sublimate, they simply go away. And then another pulse comes along, the clouds begin to form, these have a different angle, and then we've got a cross flight that says, hello, I'm here. And the planes resume their markings of this particular location, because this is maybe a 12-mile wide span across the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. That's it. And we've had this many flights interested precisely in this location. That was a perfect X. Perfect cross, 90-degree angles. All these different ripples, not of the same kind of orientation. So something is happening at a very small scale, at a micro scale, to allow these clouds to form together. Did you see that would come in? Totally contrary movement to all of the clouds on the screen. Why? Attached to a resonance? Some people say this was a Southwest flight. Is it Southwest planes that are controlling the weather? No. They are simply leaving markers in the sky. The markers in the sky reveal what the atmosphere is doing. It aids them in understanding what all of these waves are doing. Incredible shear. coming off from the south and east with this particular trail. And it wouldn't have been visible as clearly unless that trail was laid down right there. And then when the agenda changes, when the energy changes, it goes calm. When the clouds are about to reappear, the chemtrails appear nearly, if not completely simultaneously to this action in the sky.